Hi everyone, welcome to the Ancasta Interview series, part of the 2021 Dusseldorf Virtual Boat Show. Today we welcome a former World Sailor of the Year, Carolijn Brouwer, who I first got to know during the inaugural Volvo Extreme 40 series in 2005. Back then, Carolijn had switched to the Tornado class for the 2008 Olympic Games in Qingdao, her third Olympic Games. Carolijn is a multiple world champion and in 2018 completed her third Volvo Ocean race, winning the event with Dongfeng Racing in a nail-biting final run to the finish in her home city in The Hague. And I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about that. So welcome, Carolijn. How are you doing?
Thanks, Conrad. Thanks for having me.
So, we've got so much to talk about, but I want to sort of go back a little bit to the beginning because, that sort of competitive instinct, that competitive spirit, where did that come from?
Well, I'd have to say that's definitely from my father's side, and I'll tell a little story. There's quite a funny anecdote actually, where we are a water sports family. My mum and my dad were quite competitive rowers,
Okay.
but we did enjoy sailing at the local sailing club. I grew up in Brazil. I lived there for most of my childhood, and that's where I started sailing. And my parents used to sail. My older brother sailed in the Optimist, and it was natural that I would then also sail. But my parents used to sail the 470 dinghy at the time, and my dad was the skipper, and my mum was the crew, and they were competing in on just Sunday local club racing, and they were coming third for the first time in their lives. That didn't happen very often. And 50 meters before the finish line, in a tack in the maneuver, my mum missed the trapeze hook and fell overboard. And my dad then stood before two options. He could continue, leave my mum in the water, and finish the race and secure this third spot. They're probably first ever third spot. Or he could turn around and fish my mum out of the water and then finish, which would probably result in them losing their third place because other boats would have passed in the meantime. And my dad was silly enough to choose option one and continue without my mum and decide to pick it up after the finish, which resulted in them selling this 470 and buying two laser dinghies, so two single-handed boats, and they started racing each other. And that was actually the last time that my dad ever beat my mum in a race. And so, yeah, we generally laugh at home where, I've got the sort of the feel side of sailing, the nose for the shifts and the sailing from my mum, and the competitive side is definitely my dad.
Oh, that's what a fantastic story! I'm surprised. I'm surprised the marriage continued. You could have sold the house and everything else.
Well, that's right. They were happily married for 40 years, so they've done quite well.
Brilliant, brilliant. So from Brazil, then you moved to Holland after that, or how did? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that move.
Yes, my dad was a geologist, and yeah, his work had sort of finished in South America, and yeah, I was 13 and my older brother 15, and yeah, he sort of thought, well, if we're ever going to go back, then now is the time, so
Yeah.
the kids can finish secondary school, high school in Holland. And so we went back, and well, we came back in the middle of winter, and so in Holland, as kids, you're quite free. You do everything on the bike, and so I got given a bike, and I got given a hockey stick to go and play field hockey, because that's what you do in Holland. And it was only when we were driving around, sort of getting to know our new neighborhood. It was in end of January, February, sort of around this time of the year. And they were the very famous Brouwer, which is where they hold the Optimist Easter Regatta every year. You get 250 little optimists from pretty much all over the world come and compete there. And they were doing a winter training in Optimist. So yeah, 2 weeks later, then I was there myself in an Optimist with a dry suit on and beanie and gloves. And, I'd never worn more than a hat to protect myself from the sun and a life jacket. And that was basically it. So
another world.
It was a completely other world. But my parents then thought, well, she's obviously on a mission, because if she's willing to pack herself in a dry suit and go out sailing in these terrible, cold, freezing conditions, then she's obviously wanting it really badly. So that's where it continued once I was back in Holland.
That's fantastic. And so at what stage did you realize that, actually this is more than just a talent? I can really make a career out of this.
I think it was probably once, not so much in the Optimist. I then changed to the laser radial, and in my generation, sort of, you either went to the Europe dinghy or you went to the laser radial. And the Europe dinghy was just starting to become very, very popular. It was the Olympic boat then, and they had the carbon masts, and it was sort of, the more expensive boat at the time compared to the laser. And I ended up in a laser with some others of my generation. And that was it was a really fun knit group of youngsters. And I think the switch really for me came when I was selected to go to back then it was the IYRU Youth Worlds, which is now World Sailing. I was selected to represent Holland in the laser radial, and I won the Youth World Championships that year. It was in Largs in Scotland. And I think that's where I sort of, got the feel where it was a really big switch for me. And I remember not winning one race, but just never dropping out of the top four. So I was just really consistent. I was quite an all-round sailor. And I think from then on, I decided that, I wanted to pursue my my sailing career more and more.
Okay. And did you have anyone at that time, other than your parents, which obviously had a big influence on your life, but any other sort of role models around you that really influenced, your success?
Well, I always speak very highly of the Grau family in Brazil. I guess that's got to do with my background as well, having grown up there, and we were members of the same yacht club. And Torben, having won so many medals in the Olympic Games, he was definitely someone that I looked up to. And in fact, also his brother, Lars Grau, who lost his leg in one of his Olympic campaigns, but still kept sailing on at a very high level. And they've always really inspired me from a young age. And later on, especially when Torben then also started sailing in the Volvo Ocean Race, it was like, this guy's got 5 Olympic medals and is now racing around the world and manages to win the Volvo Ocean Race as well. So I definitely looked up to them a fair bit in my career.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Olympics. You've sailed in 3 games, each time in a different class. Why is that? Why as perhaps Torben and maybe people like Sir Ben Ainsley, really concentrate on one class. You've gone to 3 games in 3 different classes.
Well, and I went to 3 Olympic Games, and I came home from 3 Olympic Games without a medal. So maybe switching classes wasn't such a smart thing to do, and you're better off sticking to one discipline and pursue that avenue for a longer period of time, and maybe I would have been more successful at the Olympic Games. But it wasn't always my own choice. When my first Olympics were the Sydney Olympics in the 470 dinghy,
Yep.
I was probably aiming to reach that Olympics in the Europe dinghy, but the competition in Holland was very, very fierce at the time, and we were numbers 1 and 2 of the world. But it being the Olympics, you can only have one representative per nation.
Yep.
And so we had to have a selection trials in Holland, and unfortunately I came second in the trials. And so then, the Dutch Federation said, well, are you willing to switch classes and try and still make it to the Olympics in a different class? But that did mean that we only had 9 months to switch into a new discipline. And coming from a single-handed boat to then having to sail a double-handed boat, and you're not on your own, and you're all of a sudden there's teamwork and there's working together, and that was quite a big challenge. Once again, we had to go through quite strict selection trials within Holland to earn the spot, which we managed to do. So we actually made it to the Sydney Olympics after probably 7 months of sailing together in a new boat. Luckily, my crew, Alex, she was more experienced. She had been crewing in the 470 already, because it would have been impossible otherwise.
Yep.
That was the Olympics number 1, where I shouldn't really have been in the 470, but that's where I ended up. And then, obviously, 2004, Athens, I had unfinished business in the Europe dinghy, so I jumped back into the Europe.
Yep.
And made it to the Athens Games, and wanted to actually continue in the Europe dinghy when, after 2004, ISAF at the time, World Sailing, removed the Europe dinghy from the Olympics. And all of a sudden, he was like, oh, okay, well...
they bring in the laser radial with it.
Yes, they changed it to the laser radial. And I really enjoyed sailing the Europe dinghy once I got the opportunity. It's a really, really nice boat, and it has a fair bit of development. It's not completely one design like the laser radial. It's got the carbon mast, and there was a fair bit going on in the boat. It's a bit comparable to the Finn, actually. It's just a small sister ship. And I really enjoyed the boat. It's a really nice boat. And to me, having done the laser radial and then into the Europe dinghy was a logical step. Don't get me wrong. The laser is a great boat to learn the basics and to learn everything about tactics and strategy, and because everyone's in the same boat. So it really comes down to the person driving and sailing the boat. But to then go back to the laser radio felt like a step backwards in my career. I quite enjoyed the technical side of it and the development. So then, Seb, who was in the Finn at the time, he'd had enough of the Finn, and he came with this crazy idea: why don't we try and sail the Tornado?
Yeah.
And I hadn't actually thought of that option, but it sounded like a nice challenge, and I'm always up for a challenge. So off we went, and so after about half a year after the Athens Olympics, here we were changing our bodies to try and compete in the Tornado class. And all of a sudden you're competing against all these guys that have been in the class for over 15, sometimes 17 years.
I want to come back to the Tornado class, but I just go back to Sydney. You're at the Sydney Games. You get a call from the AMA Sports team, and you go from 470 sailing to joining a Volvo team. Describe that moment.
It was a very crazy moment, really, because I got the call. I was filling in for an American girl who was also doing an Olympic campaign at the time, and due to her Olympic commitments, could not do the whole race. And so, coincidentally, they were the two Southern Ocean legs. And I didn't have that much offshore experience. In fact, during my trials for to get the position on Amer Sports 2, that was probably my first night at sea, sailing from Vigo in Spain to Portsmouth, where the start was at the time back then. And then the next leg I did was the leg from Cape Town to Sydney, where we spent 27 days. Sailing half the time in the ocean. So yeah, it was baptism of fire, that's for sure. And I'm not sure exactly, but I think I was the only one on board that when we arrived into Sydney, when I got asked the questions, how was the leg and are you keen to go again? And I think I was the only one that said, if we had to leave again tomorrow, I'd be there. I'd be all for it. So it was a baptism of fire, but I loved every minute of it. So yeah, it was a great experience, and yeah, I feel very fortunate to have been given.
I mean, we'll come on to this again and again, I'm sure, but just describe that feeling, leaving Cape Town, you're on the wheel, of a Whitbread 60, you're pretty new to this, you pick up that first Southern Ocean depression. Just describe what that is, what that feels like.
I just remember driving and just having, it was so hard. It was a bit of a broad reach, not completely downwind yet. And I was just having to hang on to the wheel and I was just pushing it all the time. And my forearms were burning. And back then you used to hear a lot of problems with tendonitis in the elbows and all that sort of stuff, just because you were pushing so hard. They were hard boats to sail. And I remember the crew saying to me, it's like, broaching is okay, but let's not Chinese. Whatever you do, it's okay to broach, but don't Chinese this boat. And yeah, I think we had a bet on who did the most broaches had to pay all the kegs of, or the jugs of Coke once we arrived in Sydney. So I think I had to pay for a few of them once we got there.
Brilliant. And then, so Sydney, the next leg after that was another Southern Ocean leg to Brazil. Was that right?
Yes, was the leg from Auckland to Brazil. So yeah, next Southern Ocean leg.
Okay. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So from there, you moved back into your Olympic campaigning again. And as you were saying there, Seb suggested you try the Tornado. You'd had so much success in the laser class before that. Did you not think that actually to go back into the laser was given that it had come back in, was the right thing to do?
It was probably would have been the most the easy option, but I tend to not that I like to make my life difficult, but I do like challenges. And I think a lot of it as well is you have to be hungry for it. You have to want it. You have to be motivated for it. And I think that's a large part of any campaign, any project, whether you're ocean racing, whether you're Olympic sailing. You put in so much effort and you make so many sacrifices that you have to really enjoy and love what you're doing and have a lot of fun doing it. And our Tornado campaign had heaps of highs and lows, like any of the campaigns you put yourself to, because if you didn't, then it wouldn't be a challenge. But I did honestly love every minute of it. It's a fantastic boat. It was for me an opening to the high performance world. And going fast, and the Tornado, it's a 20-foot cat, and it was back then. It was a pretty quick boat. It still is a fantastic boat, but
Yep.
yeah, right now we're foiling around and going much faster. But back then, it was quite a really fine boat to sail, and so for me, sailing is such a complex sport, and you have to be challenging yourself every day. And being in the Tornado class and part of the Tornado class, it was such a huge learning curve for me, and it really, evolved my sailing career. And
Yep.
I don't regret it at all. Maybe if I'd gone back into the laser radio, maybe I had come home with a medal. I don't know. I can't look back, but I don't want to look back, because every step we took in the Tornado was just such a massive learning curve, and no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah, and you became pretty hooked on multi-hull sailing. I can see that. It's sort of dominated your life thereafter. And I can sort of can't imagine really after sailing the Tornado that you probably wanted to go back to sailing a laser. um, but
Actually, I gave it a go, because once again, after the 2008 Olympics, I wasn't quite done with the Olympics yet, but they removed the Tornado from the Olympics. And then, I did want to continue, and I made that mistake of going back into the laser radio, and I think I lasted maybe 4 months. I was in such a phase of my sailing career that to me, except for the competitive side, because the laser radio, any laser, wherever you are in the world, is hugely competitive, that was a really good side about it. But everything else to me it just felt like a step back, and I like to move forward.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm not surprised. So the Volvo Ocean Race called again in 2014 with Team SEA. This time, a big budget campaign, the first of its kind for an all-female team, with the chance to compete at the highest level. The results started to come during the race. Towards the end, you had that amazing leg win into Lorient. What did you take from that campaign?
Well, I think the first thing we all said to each other after the finish in Gothenburg is, we're now ready to race, and we're now ready to get a good result. And Team SCA was the biggest opportunity, no doubt, for women sailors in ocean racing, and it'll probably stay like that for a long time. It was it wasn't a what we call a B campaign. It wasn't the second boat, and yes, let's put female crew on there because then we have a story and we'll get publicity because of that. No, this was a sponsor that had 80% of their consumers are women, so they deliberately from get-go they said, we want to sponsor a female team. So the opportunity for us was huge. Basically, we had everything on our side. We were surrounded by the best people, by the best mentors. Mange Olsen, he was our ambassador, he was our mentor, and he really was the driver behind this team. And we were surrounded by the best people to just try and fast track as fast as possible. There was a huge gap in especially experience. The guys had been going around the world for 12 years when we'd sort of been sitting still. So it was always, even though we had a good build up to the start of the race, being 18 months, that's a long time. It was still a race against the clock from the start. So, but a huge opportunity, and once again, I was very fortunate to have been part of that. And I think also it opened a lot of doors for a lot of us as women for where we are in our sailing careers right now.
Yeah, I mean, what really struck me about that campaign was actually The results may not have all been there, but actually your presence in that race was extraordinary, and the communication, the storyline, the marketing. I seem to think that the whole race was kind of pink and blue. It was a really fantastic campaign. Um, it's still tough for women to get their foot in the door for these big races. But SEA felt like a real sort of turning point. And after that, uh, Mark Turner came in as the new chief exec. He introduced a rule that would sort of incentivize teams to recruit women sailors. And the phone rang. You picked it up. It was Charles Coudurier. He was asking if you would want to be part of the Chinese sponsored Dongfeng team. What was your reaction?
Well, it was a no brainer, really. I wasn't going to let that opportunity go by just like that. And I did go. There's a lot of us that say after we've done a race like the Volvo Ocean Race, and I'll never do this again. But at the same time, it's just something that, and Sir Peter Blake said it as well, it gets in your blood and you just cannot get rid of it. And I think that's exactly what happened to me as well. And, after the AIMA Sports and then SCA. And I think, like you said, with SCA, we stole the show on shore, definitely. But in the end, our results weren't bad. We were just chipping away and learning as the race went on. And we did quite well in the import racing. And that leg win came at the right time towards the end of the race. So it was all falling into place. And, we'd obviously reached our goal. We've put women's offshore racing back on the world map, and I guess that was one of the big goals as well. But yeah, when Charles rings you and you pick up the phone and he asks you to join, then all of a sudden your goal is completely different. Here is all of a sudden you realize that you've actually got a chance of winning the Volvo Ocean Race, which has always been a goal or maybe a dream, but it's never been realistic to have that as a goal. And now it was actually something that was becoming very real. They'd already finished third in the when we did the SCA race. They finished third as Dongfeng race team, and that was huge as well. They were very much the underdogs.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I had to come home and discuss it with obviously with Darren and ask my 4-year-old son at the time. But Darren was pretty straightforward. He said, when you talk about the Volvo Ocean Race, then there's something that starts, these sparkles light up in your eyes, and you just look like a very happy person. And so we'll fix all the logistical and practical issues that come with joining the race, but it's just something that you have to do. And so I didn't have to think about it for a very long time. And to get the opportunity to possibly have a chance of winning the race and sailing with not sailing against the best of the world, but sailing with the best of the world on one boat. It's an opportunity you can't just let go by.
Brilliant. Now, as the race unfolded, we were all on the edge of our seats, but that final leg into the Hague, you are with three other boats, or two other boats, all equal on points, and you're sat down. I think you were working with Marcel van Triest at the time. You decide your strategy. You go for what probably from the outside world looks like a bold, risky strategy, but you stick to your guns. For moments in the race, we're sort of sat there thinking, they've blown it. We just can't see how they're going to come back 50 miles or so. And yet, that you turned that corner, and it all came good. Describe what happened in those final few moments and what you were feeling.
Well, it was obviously very, very tense. The whole leg was very tense. I mean, I said it before. It's probably the biggest race or the biggest moment going into that leg was, the most important race of my life that I was going into. And I remember before we turned the corner in around the tip of Holland, and it went according to the textbook, because it went exactly how Marcel van Triest said it was going to go. He said, it's 7 miles longer. You are going to have to be very patient for the first half, but towards the end, once you come around the tip of Holland at Texel, that's where your gains are going to come. So you have to be very patient. And I remember before that, even we had to do 2 jives because we missed the ley line for the wind farms that were around the north of Holland, and those jives cost us another extra 8 minutes. And I remember saying to each other, these 8 minutes could actually cost us the race. And that's how tense it was. And I remember Charles going down below, and when the sked, because everyone was following it on their phones, and everyone had the live tracking throughout the whole leg, but we didn't. We had to wait for the position reports every 6 hours. And I remember that Charles came on deck and said, we might lose this race by 1 mile or 2 miles. And then he was scratching his head, and he went back down below, and he said, no, and came back up and said, no, we're going to win this race by 1 or 2 miles. And from then on, it was, we'd obviously been pushing all the way, but everyone kept the focus. And sort of when you see that the others, we finally see them through the binoculars, because we hadn't seen each other. We keep telling everyone around the world, it's such a cool race, because no matter where you are, even in the Southern Ocean, we were having port starboards with the other competitors. And then and constantly, when you come on deck, you can see 2 or 3 boats around you. And the last leg, when you probably want to have the visual of these other boats, you don't have it. So because of the exclusion zones that split us up. And so when you do finally see them about 10 miles before the finish, I think, through the binoculars, and we were sort of sailing straight to the finish at a good angle, and we saw that they had to at least put in another few jives. Then you sort of start pinching each other and giving each other a bit of an elbow, but you don't really believe it until obviously you've crossed the finish line. Stranger things have happened in ocean racing or in any type of racing. So you really have to wait till you cross the finish line to celebrate.
Yeah, it was it was incredible, and the emotion just sort of fell out. You could see it, certainly in Pascal's face, and it was lots of hugging and cheering and so on. Everybody from time to time has to perform in those sort of pressurized situations. What advice or guidance would you give to people to help them at this time?
I think my advice would be try and surround yourself by people that you respect and trust, and that you can have fun with on the way. And I think, I honestly believe that's what gave us the win in the end, because we're all good sailors. We can all make the boat go fast. And that's what the points showed. But I think the difference, it was a very, very tense last leg. It's probably the most pressure we've ever felt, all of us on the boat. But it's because of what we'd been through together and the respect we had for each other, that every single person on the boat's just a little piece of the puzzle, but you are the best person at the time to do that particular job. And everyone was in the position that they are best in. And there was the trust amongst each other that we believed in each other. And, you're not looking over each other's shoulders or being critical, or are you doing that right? No, you just give each other that trust. And I think that's what pulled us through in the end, is just believing in each other and being able to support each other when you most need it.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Well, that was fascinating interview, Carolijn. Thank you so much. 2018 really topped off and incredible for you. You picked up the World Sailor of the Year trophy as well. Just one final thing. What's next on the radar?
I'm going to sail the Australian A-class nationals in a week's time. So that'll be. I'm having a bit of fun foiling around here in Oz. Obviously, haven't been able to travel to Europe at all. Been pretty stuck here, but I can't complain where we live, and so I've been having a little bit of fun sailing the A class. I haven't been able to do enough in the last few years with other commitments, so I'm definitely making up for it now, and really having a lot of fun learning a lot about it. So good times.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, best of luck. I'm sure you're going to be ripping it and absolutely, loving being back out on the water. Not that we're envious here in Europe. It's cold. We're stuck at home. It's a bit of a challenge. So huge thanks to Carolijn for leaving her amazing sailing career with us. If you like this interview, please do leave us a comment. We're back every day this week with a new guest joining us. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and then you'll get a reminder. Thanks a lot. We'll see you tomorrow.